It began with a crack so loud it felt like the sky had split in two. 2 summers ago, July 14th, 9:45 p.m. exactly, the thunder rolled in from the northwest and slammed into the little Ohio farmhouse I'd inherited. The wind howled through the gaps in the window frames like a chorus of lost souls, and rain beat the corrugated tin roof with relentless fury. Inside, I was curled up on the battered couch, half watching a grainy baseball game, half dozing, with a plate of cold pizza crusts at my elbow. Then the world went white. A jagged lightning bolt carved across the sky, illuminating every corner of my living room in searing detail. In that flash, the framed photograph above the mantel, my brother and me grinning on a summer afternoon, shuddered violently on its nail. It slipped, cartwheeled off the wall, and exploded on the hardwood in a spray of glass. My heart stopped. I stared, frozen, as the picture frame lay face down in a pool of shattered shards. The next thunderclap rattled the floorboards like an explosion. I sat up, pulse hammering, sweat pricing my skin despite the chill. Just a storm, I muttered to myself, but the words sounded hollow. I forced my legs under me and knelt to pick up the portrait. Through the splintered glass, I could see my brother's face sliced in half by a jagged crack, his easy grin warped into something vicious. I shivered, the broken image feeling like a dark omen. Outside, the rain lashed the windows so fiercely that I could barely see through the sheets of water. Yet in the next flash of lightning, I thought I caught movement at the edge of the yard, a tall silhouette, unmoving, half hidden by the holly bushes. I blinked, and it vanished into the storm. My breath hitched. I scrambled to my feet and backed away from the window. The frame slipped from my trembling fingers and shattered further on the floor. I pressed my palm to my chest as though I could still feel the thunder's aftershock. Then, an almost inaudible whisper slid through the howling wind. "Don't turn around." I froze. Every rational part of me screamed it was just the wind, an illusion. But my blood chilled. I snapped my head around, eyes wide, but saw only the dark room and the rain-thrashed windows. I forced myself forward, legs unsteady, and groped for my phone on the armrest. My thumb found the 9 and then the 1, though dialing felt like wading through molasses. When the dispatcher's voice crackled in, it sounded like salvation, and the momentary relief only deepened my terror. "This is 911. What's your emergency?" "There's someone outside my window," I stammered. My eyes flew to the glass. In the next flash of lightning, there he was, a tall figure in an old-fashioned raincoat, hat brim low, head tilted at an impossible angle. A grin too wide, too pale glimmered in the lightning's glare. "Stay on the line. Officers are en route. Can you move to a safer part of the house?" I nodded, though he couldn't see me, and backed away. My breath came ragged, each inhale a struggle. I dared not disconnect. Through the storm's roar, I thought I heard another whisper, fainter but clearer. "He's waiting." My heart froze. I tried to reassure myself, "It's the wind, stress, daylight will fix this." But storms don't whisper like that. When the patrol car's overhead lights splashed red and blue across my drenched lawn, I almost ran into the street. 2 officers, flashlights bouncing, tromped across the grass and around the porch. I watched from the doorway, wrapped in a towel, as they searched for any sign of the silhouette. They found nothing. No footprints, no tracks, no vehicle impressions, nothing beyond the usual churn of wet soil. "Maybe the wind toppled the picture by accident," one suggested, crouching to inspect the broken glass. "Lightning strike, draft." I shook my head, voice hollow. It wasn't the wind. I saw a man just standing there, watching. They exchanged glances. "Mass hysteria during severe storms is common," the other officer said kindly. "High adrenaline, flashing lights, our brains fill in gaps." I wanted to tell them exactly what I saw. I wanted them to believe me. but the camera on the back deck had only captured static whenever the rain struck it, the momentary arcs of white noise giving no hint of a man in raincoat. I swallowed. Okay, I lied. Maybe I was mistaken. They left, promising to check the call logs. I cleaned up the glass and tossed the photograph into the trash, but my hands shook so badly I kept spilling the shards. Later, I stuffed one last splinter into an old matchbox and slipped it into my jacket pocket, a talisman of my disbelief. Sleep that night was impossible. Every creak, every draft, every rumble of distant thunder, real or imagined, jolted me awake. I left the front lights on and propped my phone by the window, 911 on speed dial. The next morning, convinced I'd hallucinated, I went looking for footprints in the yard. To my horror, near the back deck, I found a single line of muddy prints leading to the hydrangea bed. The tread pattern was unfamiliar: large, elongated ovals and serrated edges. I pressed my finger into the edge of one print. The mud was cold, sticky, like it clung to your skin. I rushed inside, heart hammering, and replayed the camera footage. The deck cam had frozen for a second, just long enough to wipe that segment of video clean. Then, in the final frame before the glitch, I saw a pale handprint pressed against the lens, the fingers splayed in a mocking wave. I fled next door and rang my friend Tom's doorbell. A retired firefighter with nerves of steel, Tom listened without a word, then followed me back to my yard. He knelt and studied the prints by flashlight. "This isn't from any boot I know," he admitted. He looked up, meeting my eyes in the dim porch light. "You sure you didn't track these yourself?" I shook my head. "I've never even worn boots like these." He peered at my face. "All right. I'll stick around the next time the storm hits." I thanked him and shut the door, a pit of dread in my stomach. If he didn't believe me, I wasn't sure anyone would. The following days were oppressive. The sky stayed overcast, but no rain came, only simmering heat and that latent tension of a storm waiting to break. My security cameras glitched at odd intervals, freezing on black frames or warping into uncanny distortions. At night, the house seemed alive, floorboards creaking under unseen weight, faucets rattling, whispers slithering through the vents. I dove into local history, scanning microfilm and digital archives. That's when I found her, Margaret Hale, a schoolteacher who'd drowned in a flash flood just beyond my property in 1872. Contemporary accounts said her body was swept away by surging waters, never recovered. Folks in the county whispered of a rain ghost, a woman in a sodden dress, smiling at the flood's edge, and footprints leading into the river, vanishing beneath the current. I printed the clippings and brought them to the Historical Society's librarian, Mrs. Whitcomb. She peered over her glasses at the brittle newsprint. "Margaret Hale was beloved," she said. "Weathered storms never dampened her spirit. She taught her students to find joy in all things. Then that flood took her in an instant. Some say her laughter echoes in thunderstorms." I swallowed. Could she be the figure I saw? Mrs. Whitcomb's gaze flickered. Perhaps. But legends twist over time. One storm, though, she closed her eyes, recalling some private memory. They said if you invoke her name in a downpour, you risk her coming to check on you. I thanked her and fled before she could elaborate. Across the parking lot, thunder grumbled, too close for comfort. Back home, I prepared an offering, 3 bowls of water lined on the deck, one with salt, one pure, one scented with lavender oil. I chalked a protective circle around them and placed a white candle before each. In the center, I set the matchbox of glass shards. Heart pounding, I whispered an apology and plea. "Margaret Hale, spirit of the storm, I honor your life and release you to the river's flow. May you find peace beyond the tempest's rage." As soon as I finished, a single raindrop tapped the deck, then another, until the bowls trembled with ripples. The candles guttered in a sudden gust, though no breeze stirred. In the living room, The camera feed stuttered and then showed a dark figure standing at the edge of the yard, hat brim low, coat dripping, the signature tilt of his head. For one terrifying heartbeat, the lightning revealed that grin, stretched beyond any human bounds. Then the candles popped out, one by one, and the bowl sloshed violently as though something pressed against the underside. A low, warped laugh slithered through the air. I scrambled inside, slamming the door. My phone buzzed with a new file. It was a video of the home office desk, the lamp blinking on and off, then a close-up of muddy footprints scaling the wall like a spider, ending at a single handprint on the ceiling. I dropped the phone, hands shaking so badly the floor blurred beneath me. I knew, then, that no barrier, wood, glass, or chalk could hold it back. The video file glowed on my phone's screen, a single, looping clip of my home office. The lamp flickered, the chair spun, and then footprints crawling up the wall like the march of some unholy army, followed by a solitary, mud-smeared handprint on the ceiling. My chest squeezed tight as I stared, sweat pricing my skin. No protective circle, no camera, no friend's flashlight could save me now. Whatever this thing was, it was growing bolder by the hour. I dropped to my knees, eyes locked on the phone, until a voice low, damp, as if from beneath the earth murmured behind me. "Join me, in the rain." I whirled, heart crashing against ribs, but saw only the yawning hallway, empty and dark. The whisper trailed off like a dying sigh. My breath came ragged. I needed escape. I bolted for the front door, grabbing my coat and bag. Every shadow seemed to twitch, every floorboard groaned with unseen weight. I fumbled the lock and lunged outside into the misty night air. Through the drizzle, my headlights shone down the drive empty. I slid into my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, phone clutched to my chest. The engine caught on the first try, and I peeled away, tires spitting gravel into the damp. As I drove, the rain softened to a steady drizzle, but the dread remained. In the rearview mirror, I glimpsed the farmhouse silhouette, windows dark as dead eyes. I forced my gaze forward, pressed hard on the accelerator, and didn't stop until the glow of streetlights told me I'd reached the edge of town. I checked my phone again. The video file was gone. Deleted itself, or never saved. I scrolled through my gallery, nothing. My pulse thundered. Had I imagined it? The video. The whispers. The footprints. But my clothes were still stained with mud, and my coat collar damp from the unceasing drizzle. I parked under a flickering street lamp, lungs heaving, and tried to steady my thoughts. I needed answers. Something to explain what I'd seen and heard. I backed into the glow of the lamp, phone in hand, and searched Rain Ghost Ohio folklore until bleary-eyed. Every site repeated the same legend: Margaret Hale, the schoolteacher who drowned, her spirit bound to storms and sorrow, her smile half remembered by frightened farmers. Some believed she welcomed drowned souls to join her in the flood waters, others claimed she lured the living to their doom, one drop of rain at a time. My thumb trembled as I tapped on a small local history blog. The author claimed the rain ghost was incomplete, neither fully malicious nor benevolent, because her body was never found. She was trapped between worlds, neither alive nor dead. The post ended with a warning: if you face the rain ghost, do not flee. Do not show fear. You must help her cross over, or risk joining her forever. I choked on my own breath. The thought of helping her cross over felt impossible. How could I, a terrified civilian armed with nothing but doubts and breadcrumbs of lore, guide a restless spirit into peace? But running away had only made the haunt stronger. The threat had followed me to town, and the memory of that grin, stretched thin and monstrous, would not fade. I made a decision: I would return at dawn, confront the farmhouse and the spirit strain by strain. I pulled myself together, rubbed the mud from my coat, and drove to a 24-hour diner on the highway outskirts. I needed coffee and time to plan. Inside, Neon lights buzzed overhead, and the waitress eyed me like a stray dog served 2 cups in ceramic mugs that steam scented with bitterness. I drank one cold, shaking, and used the other to scribble notes on a napkin. Ritual of release, salt, lavender, spoken name. Tools, matchbox glass shards, video, if retrievable. Allies, Tom, friend, Mrs. Whitcomb, Historical Society. Objective, find Margaret's grave or her last known location to offer closure. By 4:30 a.m., the world outside was empty. I paid the bill, left the mugs, and drove the 5 miles back to the farmhouse under a slate-gray sky. The storm had passed, but the air was thick with moisture and omen of things yet to come. I slipped through the back gate before dawn, Tom's flashlight beam bobbing ahead where he waited on the porch. He greeted me with a tired nod, dark circles under his eyes. "I thought you were done with this," he muttered, adjusting the beam toward the yard. "I wasn't," I admitted, voice hoarse. "I need to finish it." He frowned but fell into step beside me as we crossed the soggy grass. The chalk circle from before was washed clean away, mere gray mud staining the weeds. The hollow floodlights cast long, wavering shadows across the yard. My heart hammered, but I steeled myself. It was now or never. Inside, the house was deathly quiet. We flipped on headlamps, dust motes dancing in the beams. The living room showed no sign of vandalism, no footprints, no furniture shifts, yet the lingering dread pressed in, as if the walls exhaled a cold sigh. We set up in the home office, clearing the desk to make space. I spread my napkin notes, lined up the matchbox shards, and lit 3 white candles. Tom loaded fresh batteries into my phone camera, ready to record any evidence. My hands trembled as I took a deep breath, then spoke Margaret Hale's name into the stale air. "Margaret Hale," I began, "I honor you. Your life was cut too short. I offer these shards of glass, fragments of memories, and these candles, symbols of remembrance, as keys to your peace. May your spirit flow back to the river that claimed you. May your laughter become the ripple of water, not the curse of thunder." The candles guttered in response, as though inhaling, and the room temperature plummeted. My teeth chattered. Through the window, the sky darkened in spite of the clear forecast. A crack of thunder rolled low and long, echoing down the hallway. The laptop screen flashed, a new file started recording without command. Tom stiffened. "This is it." We rose and faced the window. At first, nothing, then, illuminated by a single flare of lightning, I saw him, the smiling man, standing in the yard, soaked to the bone, tilted head, and that crocodile grin. Beyond him, rain began to fall, dripping through the open window frame, though the pane was closed. Water pooled on the floor. "He's here," I whispered. "He's back." I lifted the matchbox. "Margaret, I beg you, see me. Let me help you." The smiling man's grin widened, the thunder booming like applause. He lifted one pale hand and pressed a finger to his chest, where the heart-shaped stain pulsed. Then he raised his arm and pointed directly at me. The candles erupted in flame, hot, brilliant, and then died in a smoky hiss. The room plunged into darkness. Tom swung his beam, catching only moving shadows. "We need to leave." I shook my head, voice urgent. "No, we need to finish this." Digging in my bag, I pulled out a small vial of river water I'd collected at the local creek that morning. I uncorked it and sprinkled droplets around the desk, chanting Margaret's name again. The air rippled, the room quivered like a stage set. In the darkness, something pressed against me from behind, cold and wet. I stiffened, heart stuttering. Then a whisper, right in my ear, "Join me." I spun, but Tom had grabbed my arm. "We have to go." I yanked free, stumbled to the window, and flung open the sash. Rain-laced wind slammed into the room, and I could see her now, a woman in a soaked dress, hair plastered to her skull, pale face half hidden by shadows. Her eyes empty, yet full of longing, locked onto mine. Her lips parted in a sorrowful smile. "Margaret," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. She raised both arms, beckoning. Behind her, lightning etched the riverbank in stark relief, silver water swirling around broken wooden beams, flotsam of her fatal flood. Then her form wavered, flickered, and I saw the faint outline of a grave marker half sunken in mud. "Margaret Hale, 1850, 1872. Rest," I echoed. "Go home." Her smile softened, sorrow washing through her features. The rain slowed to a gentle patter. The wind stilled, the house's creaks stilled, and in the hush I heard water lapping warm, welcoming like a lullaby. The smiling man vanished from the yard, leaving only a trailing echo of thunder. In the same moment, power snapped back on, lamps flickered, electronics whirred. The video file stopped recording. I sank to my knees, hands muddy from river water, and watched the specter fade into translucent mist. The candles, once spent, rekindled briefly in their holders before settling to a steady glow. Tom exhaled beside me, voice raw. Did it work?" I stayed silent, eyes on the window. The world outside was calm, no storm, no silhouette. Only the gentle rain on the window pane, a soft, steady hymn. "I think," I began, voice trembling, "she's at peace." In the days that followed, the hauntings ceased. The video file never reappeared. The cameras functioned normally. The winds blew softly, rain fell without malice, and the old farmhouse felt like home once more. Tom joked about our wild ghost hunt, but I knew what we'd faced and what we'd released. On July 14th this year, at 9:45 p.m., lightning split the sky again. My peace of mind trembled, an echo of that first storm, but I breathed easy. I stood by the living room window, watched the flash, and saw no silhouette. No grin. Only rain dancing on the pane. Yet sometimes, when the wind whistles through these walls, I catch a faint, musical whisper, "Thank you." It's carried on the breeze, as gentle as water flowing downstream. And I know Margaret Hale has finally crossed over. But storms are endless, and the river never truly sleeps. I keep a candle lit on that anniversary night, leaving its flame for her. Because even a grateful ghost needs light to find her way home. And if you ever hear that whisper, feel the rain on your skin as though it's calling your name, remember, don't run. Face it. Speak her name. Offer peace. Or risk finding yourself, one day, smiling in the thunder, wondering why you can't remember how to leave. The cicadas droned like ancient timers in the fading light, and the warm breeze stirred the canopy above into a soft susurration. It was the sort of evening that felt soaked with promise, golden shafts of sunlight slicing through emerald leaves, painting the forest floor in shifting patterns of light and shadow. At 12 years old, I believed nothing bad could happen here. Aunt Marjorie's backyard stretched into a tangle of pines and birches so dense it felt like a secret kingdom. My best friend Emily and I had spent every summer dusk playing hide and seek until the porch light cast its broad beacon across the grass, forcing our laughter to yield to dinner calls. That evening began like any other. Emily's high-pitched giggle twined with my own as I covered my eyes against a weathered oak, counting out loud to 20. My toes wiggled in the soft earth, I could smell the sweet decay of fallen leaves and hear the distant hoot of an owl just stirring. "Ready or not, here I come," I yelled, hopping into the open. The air felt thick as I followed our usual path, scanning hollows under ferns and the crooks of low branches. Beams of sunlight danced on a carpet of moss as I trailed Emily's footfalls, recently dampened by dew. My heart skittered with anticipation. Would I find her behind the big rock near the creek, or in the hollow stump we dubbed our fortress? 20 minutes passed. My shouts drifted unanswered. The forest, once alive with birdsong, had grown unsettlingly still. Branches no longer whispered, only the distant river gurgled. A cold knot of dread took root in my chest. Something was wrong. I rounded a curve in the trail and froze. There, crouched behind a bramble thicket, was Emily, only she wasn't moving. Her auburn ponytail, her birthday print shirt, even the frayed denim of her shorts, each detail matched perfectly. But as I crept closer, I noticed the wrongness. Her skin too smooth, ivory pale, almost porcelain. Her head tilted slightly, neck craned at an angle no child could maintain without pain. Her lips parted in a slow, mechanical hum, as though she held an old, broken music box in her throat, garbling a familiar lullaby. I began, taking a step forward. The figure did not flinch. The hum warped into a sharp, warbling tinkle, like gears grinding in a rusted hinge. My pulse thudded. I raised a hand to wave, but the thing stayed rooted, gaze vacant. Then, without breaking its tune, it lifted one jointed arm, half flesh, half doll, pointed toward me, and remained utterly still. I stumbled back. Another silhouette darted into my periphery, slim, motionless, glimpsed through the trees. My breath caught. Two Emilys. Impossible. I whirled in a panic. The second figure blended into shadow before I could discern details. The music box drone crushed the quiet. My chest tightened, and I turned on my heel, sprinting back the way I came, every snapped twig a scream beneath my feet. I burst through the undergrowth, lungs burning, and skidded to a stop at the edge of Aunt Marjorie's property, beside the old woodshed. It stood there like a sentinel, weather-grayed boards, a rusted latch, cobwebs veiling its triangular roof. We'd ignored this place for years, an afterthought. Now I recognized its menace. The latch squealed as I yanked the door open. Dust motes floated in a single beam from the cracked window. Inside, nothing but a bare wooden floor and a steel hook dangling from a beam. No toys. No Emily. Only the stale scent of rot and old nails. Then a sharp snap, like someone clicking their fingers in the gloom. My scalp prickled. I spun, flashlight trembling in my hand. In the corner, behind a stack of weathered crates, the shadows shifted. Two tiny eyes glowed red for a heartbeat before they vanished. A low rasp drifted from somewhere above me, and I caught the hint of that warped lullaby again, muffled but unmistakable. I backed out of the shed so fast I almost tumbled. The door slammed shut behind me, sending up a puff of dust. My breath came in ragged gasps. I pressed a hand to the rough boards, feeling them vibrate faintly as though the entire shed were alive. Carla's flashlight beam wavered over the grass. Beyond the shed's frame, the woods loomed silent and hungry. My scream caught in my throat. I realized then, this was no game. The forest had claimed Emily, and offered me in exchange a hollow mockery. I swallowed bile and scurried home, mind racing. Polaroids, old news clippings, dusty attic boxes, whatever I needed, I would find it. That night, I knew the forest would not let me, and it would not let Emily go easily. I barely slept that night. My mind replayed the broken lullaby and those red eyes in the woodshed. At dawn's first gray light, I slipped into Aunt Marjorie's mudroom, where she'd stashed an old shoebox labeled Summer '94 Evans photos. My heart pounded as I lifted the lid. Dust motes floated in the pale beam of my flashlight. Inside, faded Polaroids lay stacked haphazardly, sunlit picnics, birthday cakes, a boy with dark curls and a crooked grin. I thumbed through until I found one dated June 1994, handwritten in tidy script at the white border's bottom. Evan, age 6, June 1994, lost to the woods. The image chilled me. In it, Evan stood before the very treehouse Emily and I had claimed as ours. Sunlight dappling his face, he wore a sailor outfit, expression blank, eyes distant. A coil of rope and a half-open toy chest lay behind him. No other children. No adults. I lifted the Polaroid closer. The face stared back, eerily vacant, as though the boy had already departed this realm. A memory flickered. My grandmother whispering of a missing nephew, vanished during a game of hide-and-seek in these woods. Nobody ever found him. His disappearance had been hushed, an old family wound no one wanted to reopen. A sudden snap like the shutter of a camera made me spin around. The kitchen doorway framed empty air, but I could swear I heard a child's breathy giggle. I slid the Polaroid into my pocket, heart pounding. If Emily's doppelganger was tied to Evan's restless spirit, maybe I could end both horrors by giving Evan the closure he never received. That night, I barricaded my door with a chair and lay atop my bed, clutching the Polaroid tight. The glassy stare of Evan's face kept me company in the darkness. Midnight passed in tense silence, until a soft knock, on the bedroom door jolted me awake. I swallowed hard. "Who's there?" I croaked. No answer, only the steady creak of the chair legs as someone or something shifted weight against it. My flashlight beam danced across the walls. Then, from the hallway came a whisper, fractured and childlike. "Emily." My blood ran cold. I knew that warped intonation, Emily's name stretched into an uncanny incantation. I inched toward the door, peered through the gap in the curtains. Outside, moonlight revealed a small shape crouched under the windowsill, pale, lifeless, an Emily-sized silhouette. I dared not breathe. The shape rose slowly, head tilting at that doll-like angle. Its lips parted in the same warped tinkle of a broken music box. Then it turned, stepping backward into the dark hallway, each movement jerky, puppet-like. My fear morphed into resolve. I had the Polaroid. Evan needed to be remembered, not trapped. I flung the door open and called out, voice shaking, "Wait. I can help you." The figure froze. In the moonbeam, I saw its hollow sockets flicker with red light. Then it vanished, melting into the shadows like mist. My flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into suffocating black. I sprinted to the attic door hoping to find more clues and jammed it shut behind me. I didn't hesitate. I snatched my shoes and dashed out the back door, flashlight bobbing wildly as I raced toward the tree line. The forest greeted me like an old enemy, branches twisting overhead, roots snagging at my ankles, corrosion of darkness pressing in. Every step forward felt like wading through quicksand. Behind me drifted echoes of children's laughter, high-pitched, metallic, utterly wrong. I dared a glance back. In the wavering halo of my beam, small shapes flitted between trunks, swaying in unison. One lifted a hand, beckoning silently. My breath caught. I stumbled, heart hammering. The laughter climbed into a cacophony, dozens of tiny voices, overlapping and deranged. The trees themselves seemed to shift, closing in, their bark cracking into grinning faces. Roots writhed, twisting to trip me. I fumbled for the Polaroid in my pocket, pressing it between thumb and forefinger. "Evan," I whispered, "I'm sorry. I'll set you free." The laughter faltered, warped into one solitary sob. I burst into a clearing where the forest floor gleamed silver under the moonlight. There, half buried in damp earth, lay a broken toy chest, and beside it, the battered rope from the Polaroid's background. My stomach lurched. This was exactly where the image said he had vanished. I knelt and placed the Polaroid face up on the chest's lid. My flashlight stuttered, and a phantom wind stirred the papers in my hand. The laughter died completely, leaving a vacuum of silence. I pressed a hand to the Polaroid, whispering, "Evan, you can go now. Go home." The ground trembled. A cool mist rose from the earth, swirling around the toy chest. In its center, a faint outline of a small boy appeared, transparent, like morning fog. He tilted his head, eyes empty yet somehow hopeful. The mist coalesced, and he stepped through the lid, free of the chest's prison at last. I stumbled back as he raised a hand and pointed deeper into the trees toward the shadow where Emily's void form lurked. As though answering his gesture, the doll child silhouette materialized at the edge of the clearing, frozen in its broken pose. "Thank you," a voice echoed in my mind, soft, distant, unmistakably Evan's. The mist enveloped him, carried him away along a path that glowed pale blue through the pines. The doll Emily shuddered, its joints clicking. It took a single step forward, but without the chorus of spectral children granting it strength, it collapsed in a heap of stiff limbs and cloth. The luminous path drew it toward Evan's light. The two forms merged in a swirl of mist, rising skyward in a spiral of glimmering motes. Then a single, clear note chimed like a well-crafted music box winding down. The forest exhaled. Branches ceased their mocking dance, leaves settled. The night went quiet, pure, as though the nightmare had been scrubbed away. Gasping, I sank to the mossy ground. My flashlight died, and in that absolute black, I felt tears of relief slipping down my cheeks. At dawn, I would tell Aunt Marjorie about the Polaroid and ask her to bury it with Evan's memory. But for now, I simply breathed in the cool air and let the forest's gentle calm wash over me. The first light of dawn filtered through the trees in pale lavender shafts, and a hush settled over the forest like a benediction. Exhausted, I collapsed against the base of the great oak where Emily and I had hidden so many times. My legs trembled, my lungs burned, but the terror that had driven me here felt strangely distant, like an echo fading with the night. I glanced at the forest floor, still stained with the swirling mist of Evan's release. The broken toy chest lay empty at my side. No shadows stirred. Birds began their cautious morning song, and even the cicada seemed to whisper in lower registers, uncertain whether to join in. I closed my eyes and let the calm wash over me, grateful beyond words. A sudden hum, mechanical, distant, pulled me upright. I squinted toward the treetops and saw it, a small drone, its LED light pulsing a soft green, drifting higher. A moment later, a second drone appeared, then a third, hovering in formation above the clearing. They must belong to Aunt Marjorie's neighbor, an amateur photographer who loved capturing dawn light. Relief warmed my chest. No supernatural spy was watching, just the curious eye of a lens. I rose unsteadily as the lead drone banked away, its camera tracking me until, in a final graceful arc, it swung directly over the clearing. From my vantage point, I watched a live feed projected on its underside, the lush green carpet of grass marred by something unmistakable, tiny, child-sized footprints pressed deeply into the dew-soaked earth. My breath hitched. I sank to my knees, tracing the pale indentations with trembling fingers. They formed a path I did not recognize, a winding trail weaving between ferns and upturned roots, leading away from the woodshed, past the creek, and right toward the old treehouse. I had never seen those prints before tonight. They were too small, smaller even than Emily's, and the pattern was irregular, almost pinched, as if made by a creature with uneven toes. How? I whispered, mind racing. The drone's lens followed those prints, leaving my trembling hand in its frame before lifting again into the rosy haze of morning. I watched it drift toward the frontier of trees, as though documenting the last vestiges of that nightmare. In that moment, I understood, Evan had found peace, but something else had been awakened, a shape that mimicked Emily, a thing born of loss and longing and ancient woods. It had used our childhood game as a doorway, slipping through the joys we never suspected were laced with shadows. The drones rumbled overhead as they turned for home, and I felt the sun's first warmth on my face, a promise that day would come. I rose slowly, heart still fluttering, and followed the footprints with careful steps. They led me past the creek's gentle riffle and up the rungs of the treehouse ladder, each hollow echo underfoot like a warning drum. At the top, the floorboards were bare, but etched into the wood, scored deep as claws, was the same uncanny tread pattern I'd seen at the woodshed, at my doorstep, and on the attic wall. I ran a finger along one gouge and felt a shiver, as if something unseen pressed against my back, urging me to remember. I closed my eyes and whispered into the hollow air, "This place is ours. Not yours." The words were weak, but they felt like a vow. Below, the forest stirred into life, a distant owl's lament, the rustle of squirrels, the hopeful trill of warblers. The voice of the world returning, reclaiming the hollow cavern of night. With careful resolve, I climbed down and gathered my shoes. I would return home, lock my door, and never treat dusk as an invitation again. Yet as I stepped over the final rung, my gaze fell on the grass at the treehouse's foot. There, pressed into fresh mud, were two tiny footprints side by side, one too small for any child, the other shaped exactly like Emily's sneaker sole. I swallowed hard. No amount of morning light, no promise of safety, could wash away that proof. Something had been here. Something might still linger in the shadows between childhood and adulthood, between laughter and silence. I turned away from the treehouse and strode through the thinning mist, leaving the footprints behind. The forest seemed to sigh, relieved of its watchers for now, but I knew it would hold onto these secrets, guarding them until the next hapless seeker dared to hide.